coming up on the Lead Ministry podcast.
Why do you think God would send you 16 volunteers and you do not have the capacity to manage them at all? So all of those super excited volunteers, they're bright-eyed, they're bushy-tailed, they got up a little bit early, they got a second half cup of coffee, their hair is done right, they got their best Sunday best on, they cannot wait to volunteer for you, and you give them a very crappy experience. And
right.
you missed the opportunity big time. Why would God entrust you with those 16 new volunteers when they would immediately feel underutilized? That's my question.
And now your host, Josh Denhart.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Lead Ministry podcast. We're grateful that you're here. My question to you as the listener, have you ever been to Phoenix, Arizona? Right? It's that super hot city, right, in the absolute southwest of the country, kind of a desert area. It's a big, sprawling city. Now, Bill, have you ever been to Phoenix, Arizona? Have you ever actually been in the city or flown into that city?
No, I have never been there. I've always kind of wanted to go to Arizona. It seems like a cool place, but just have never made it there yet.
Yeah, so it's an interesting city. It's very, very large, obviously. It's a huge metro, but it's very sprawling. But here's the interesting thing. Like, it's surrounded by like a horseshoe of mountains. Like, there's like an entry point, so to speak, and then there's like this just rim of mountains, and then the city is in the middle of that. And it's very sprawling. It's a huge, huge, huge city. But as you're flying in, like you see these, and then you're driving around. You fly in, you can see them for sure. But then you're driving around and you see these massive cement channels that are large enough for like semi-trucks to drive down. And I was like, what is that? What is that? And my buddy said those are riverbeds, man-made riverbeds. And I was like, time out. We're in the smack middle of a desert.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he said, well, you know, once a year, there's a time period called the monsoon season where we'll have an inordinate amount of rainfall in a very, very, very short period of time. And I said, well, that sounds great. It is a desert. And he's like, yes, true. But sometimes a massive influx of rain all at once has disastrous effects on people and disastrous effects on property. And so here's where the analogy starts. The Arizona city planners thought ahead and decided to construct riverbeds in the anticipation of the future blessing of rain.
Wow, smart.
Smart. So once the rainfall started to come down, these predetermined riverbeds, they were kind of like underground. They were channels that led to these underground aqueducts. Number one, you could save the water. That's huge in a desert. The people in this community, they need heavy duty resources of water, and it only rains once a year. Probably be a smart idea to capture some of that. However, it's both proactive, capturing future rain, but it's also preventative. Not only were they capturing this rain, but they were simultaneously preventing harm to people and to property. Therefore, I like to think in a church leadership context, I want to be, number one, myself, but I want to teach other people to think like the Arizona city planners. What are your thoughts on this so far, Bill?
I love it. I instantly get that analogy because you can already start to see how those, I guess, channels for water become infrastructure that supports, you know, whatever could happen in your ministry. Like, It seems healthy and wise to
do some pre-planning, right?
Yes,
and to
absolutely.
think ahead. Here's a great direct story where I laid this principle to bear, and the pastor that I was on the call with for a coaching thing, they were like, oh my word. And that, I physically watched their composure change. Their original composure was super elation, super excitement. They were a church whose building was over here on the left, but they were in the process of building a new building, and their new building was going to be at the epicenter of their city, and where two major off-ramps happen of the two major thoroughfares. And so he said, we, just because of our position, we're gonna grow like crazy. We're no longer in geographical obscurity. We're gonna be in geographical prime time. And I said, that's totally cool. And I said, so what you're telling me is you guys are anticipating a flood of new people coming to your church. And he was super excited and super smiley and said, yes. And then I laid this principle to bear, and his composure completely changed to, oh my word, we are not even anywhere close to being prepared for this influx. So I said, okay, let's just take one thing for just a time here. Have you thought about how you're going to manage people just for checking in their kids? And I'm not kidding about this. He kind of changed into a pale, gray color in his skin. You know what I mean? He was freaked out. And I said, and he was like, I said, so what do you currently have? And he explained it. And I said, so what I'm hearing you say is you're just going to transfer that and do the exact same thing. And he goes, we were kind of planning on that. And I said, okay, quick second. What about coffee at your church? Can you just do me a quick deep dive here. And he was like, well, it kind of looks like this. And I said, and your plan thus far is to just replicate that and to bring the small table to your, yeah. And he goes, we're in big trouble. And I said, tell me why. I knew why, but he said, we're going to be flooded with people, and we don't have the proper infrastructure to manage that great influx of people. And I said, so what's going to happen? And he said, number one, our facility is going to be overrun, and we're not going to. So, okay, you're going to have property damage. Yeah. And I said, but also, he goes, we're going to have people damage. And I said, bingo. The people that are coming, you're not going to be able to bless and take care of them. So to be thinking like the Arizona city planners, you're like, okay, time out. What blessing do we want to happen in the future? Well, I want a whole bunch of people to come. Fantastic. Are you prepared for that? Well, we'll figure that out once they get here. Wrong answer.
No. And actually that shows a big difference between the short-term planning and a long-term planning, right? And
exactly.
I love to, whenever we're making changes at our church, I really love to slow down and say, just because a solution to a problem makes sense for this next ministry season doesn't mean that is actually the solution that is going to work long-term. And so project out. So you should be thinking about this as a ministry leader. You need to project out, if the ministry goes the way that I think it's going to go, in this guy's scenario, you have these on-rafts coming into your church. If it goes where we think it's going to go, how can I put plans in place that are both short-term, but are also looking beyond the short-term to the long-term? You need to build, in other words, you need to build scalability into your ministry.
Yeah, you need to future-proof.
Yes.
Now, Bill, I speak to tons of groups of people, and maybe I'm at a national conference, and I will often ask a room full of 100 to 150 people at a breakout session, let's say. I would say, hey, raise your hand if you would want 16 new volunteers this Sunday. Every single hand raises in the air. And I go, okay, I want you to keep your hands in the air only if you can answer the next things in the affirmative. So every hand is in the air. And I say, only keep your hands in the air if you have a brief formalized tour where potential volunteers can walk around the church and see everything in action and learn about the possibilities of serving. Whole bunch of hands drop. I'm like, okay, so you don't have that. No. Okay, great. Keep your hands up. Do you have a short and a long-term job description? Now, by the way, when I mean short and long, if you're part of the lead ministry ecosystem, you understand we have a plan for a long job description and for a super short job description. And tons of hands drop. Okay, sorry. Any of the remaining people who are probably not being truthful about what you really have, I'll ask the question, right? Your hands are still up. Do you have a single-sided gift set analysis that people could fill out as they're standing there so that they could have at least an idea of where their personality is? Tons of hands drop. Okay. Do you have a 3-week, maybe even a 2-week shadowing program so that volunteers can, quote, try it before they buy it? Every hand is down. And now I say, quick question, why do you think God would send you 16 volunteers and you do not have the capacity to manage them at all? So all of those super excited volunteers, they're bright-eyed, they're bushy-tailed, they got up a little bit early, they got a second half cup of coffee, their hair is done right, they got their best Sunday best on, they cannot wait to volunteer for you, and you give them a very crappy experience, and
right.
you missed the opportunity big time. Why would God entrust you with those 16 new volunteers when they would immediately feel underutilized? That's my question.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And the thing is that God deeply loves you, and so He's not going to give you those.
Right.
and he loves his church.
Yes, and He loves you as a leader. He doesn't want to do that to you as a leader, but He also loves the 16 people that He wants to take to great places and spaces.
Right. Absolutely. And what's interesting is, and I've seen this too, when you start to act like the Arizona city planner in our scenario, and you start to put those infrastructure things in place that you need in order to receive them, that's often when you see God send more people your way. And it's almost like magic.
Yeah. And so I would say this, build the infrastructure. Your volunteer, let's just go with volunteers for a minute. Build the volunteer infrastructure that you hope would be there in your future. Or I would say this, let's think about it this way. I remember a lot of people, Bill, are like, man, I sure would like to have a full-time staff associate under me. And I'm like, okay, can I tell you something? They're like, yeah, I doubt that you know how to run another human. I don't think that you think in your mind that if all of my ministry problems would be solved if I just had a full-time associate. No, your problems would compound because you don't know how to run another person. And so watch this. I would treat volunteers as if they were the staff that I wished that I had in 5 years. And guess what? You want to know who grew through that? Yours truly. I grew because I was treating volunteers as if they were the staff that I had hoped for. And if I treated those volunteers that way, I was actually secretly building the infrastructure that could support staff if I ever got them. And guess what? Behold, I was the Arizona city planner. And I thought if I ever had multiple staff members, I would need a meeting agenda structure. I would need job reviews. I would need to have off-site strategic planning things multiple times a year. So I need to build those. And so I built them and I ran my volunteers through them as if they were the staff members that I wished that I had. And so then when I ended up getting the staff members, I had the infrastructure built for those staff members. Yeah,
I love that. That is so helpful for ministry leaders to hear.
Yeah. And it takes work, right? I'm sorry. We've talked about it before on the podcast. And since it is your favorite theorem, I'll put it out there. This is the second law of thermodynamics. It takes work. Do you think that these bizarre cement riverbeds just up and birthed themselves? They did not.
No.
They had to be built by a human being. They had to be thought of before they were built. They had to have meetings to go, where in the world would it be best to run? There's a whole ton of work that ends up in the underground aqueduct or the repository of water. That thing is filled. There is a whole bunch of things that took place in order to get to that point of blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, in the process of building that, imagine if it's been a long time since there was tons of water, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine the naysayers surrounding, like, why are you doing all these things? Mm-hmm. Like, you're preparing for something. What's the deal? Like, we're not there yet, but you have to have that. That's where you as a ministry leader have to have that vision of what could God do? What is God calling me to? And where is he calling me to lead it? And if that's the case, then I need to have everything in place to make sure that that's going to be successful when it comes about.
For sure. If I could go back in time, I was a high school chemistry teacher, and I remember another teacher pulled me aside at the mid to almost end of first quarter. And he was like, dude, like, why? Why are you working so hard? And why are you like doing all of this relationship development with your kids along? You're doing like community builders alongside teaching chemistry. Like, you work way too hard. And he actually made fun of me in front of other teachers. And I'm not kidding. Like, he did not see the vision of what I was doing. Like you're saying, why would you do this? Okay. So all of a sudden come fourth quarter, we're all in the teacher's lounge, and that teacher and the other teachers that he made fun of me in front of, they were all like, my kids have stopped learning. This is like pulling teeth. I hate the fourth quarter. They want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. And I said, my kids are eating out of my hands. Because I built this relational community that you thought was a dumb idea, but it's now paying untold dividends. They are beyond with me. They want to work for me. Nobody has given up, but I was building something that you couldn't conceive of its future benefit. So I'm telling you, man, this is sad and it's sick, but this has been my life story where I am building something and people are like, you're a freak, man. You're kind of obsessive. Why would you build it that robust? And I'm like, I'm building it that robust because I can see a future that I don't want to have to work hard in.
Right. Absolutely. It's actually like a really great modern equivalent to the parable of the talents.
Tell me more.
So like those other teachers were the servant who takes their talent and they bury it in the ground and they don't invest it. And then when the master comes back, the master goes, what did you do with it? And they said, well, I just buried it. And he's like, you're wicked. You didn't invest in it at all. Whereas you were the servant who took 10 talents and you were trusted with a lot and you went and invested it and you doubled it. And so when the master came back, he said, hey, I'm going to give you these talents and I'm going to give you the talent from the guy who didn't do anything, because I can trust you with a lot of resources. And I think that's a really important analogy for us in ministry is for us to understand, like, take what God has given you in this moment and invest it for the future and grow the ministry. And you do that by putting these infrastructures in place so that you can achieve that greater vision.
Yes. And, I would just ask people who are listening, how comfortable are you living out your existence for the next 3 to 5 years the exact same way that you're living it right now? And there's a whole bunch of people who are like, time out. I can't live that way. Okay. Well, when I started and I took over and it was a disheveled, beat up children's ministry, I was like, time out, dude. There is no possibility as I extrapolate this out. I do not want to be living this way in 3 years. So I have to do something different right now in order to ensure that in 3 years, I'm not experiencing the same thing. Literally, dude, the majority of ministry leaders that I interact with, or at least a large chunk of them, they are experiencing what Einstein called insanity. They're doing the exact same things year after year, and they are banking on some hopeful future that's going to be changed, but they're not doing anything different about it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Not good. Not good.
It's an exercise in futility.
It is. And so my story was that I did the 100% of my job, and for 18 months, I did 25 to 45% extra. Now, somebody's like, well, I don't have that in me. Okay, well, here's the deal. I'll see you in 5 years, and you will still be experiencing the same pains that you were experiencing year one. I didn't want to do that. I don't think that you want to do that. One way is to do your regular job and then spend extra time building the secret infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's gonna, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, well, I can't work that hard forever. Guess what? You're not going to work that hard forever. Once that 18 months or maybe 12 months is done, you now have systems that you don't have to work 125 to 140%. I can now work 92% and it's operating at 110% level. Let's go.
Right. Yeah, that's so perfect. I think the other thing people need to hear is if you hear kind of a message like this, you might go, but you don't even understand. There's so much to fix. Everything needs to be fixed, and people get overwhelmed.
They do.
And I think what people need to hear is that this is a mentality that you have to adopt. And as you adopt this mentality and you slowly begin to build these infrastructures in place to make your job easier, right? Mm-hmm. What you see is there's a snowball effect. You actually get, as you begin to offload one thing, now you're taking the time that you had before, the extra time you're putting in, plus the time that you offloaded into the next thing. And you keep doing that, and you're building momentum for a healthy ministry.
That is my life story. And so, this is totally random. Somebody's like, well, where would I begin? Well, here's what I did, as dorky as this sounds. I always started with the game guy. That sounds weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In children's ministry and youth ministry, you're probably going to have a game. And so when I first started, it was bad news. I had to do everything. It was a completely disheveled, beat up ministry. It was out of control. I should never have taken the job. Oh my word. Okay. But yes, I should have taken the job. But I took the job, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, where's the easiest win that I could possibly have? And I'm like, okay, I am capable of right now, Bill, if you and I had 84 kids in my street, I could run a game right now, right? Mm-hmm. That's fine. But do I have the wherewithal to teach somebody else like the 7 different little bottom line bare dollar things that you need to do in order to effectively have a game with 84 kids? And so I was like, great, come over here. Let me take you to lunch for the next 6 weeks, and I'm going to download you with everything that has to do with leading games. I want you to watch me, and I want you to question me. Why in the world didn't you call on John Smith? His hand was raised the entire time when you were explaining the instructions. I'm like, John Smith did not have a question. He was raising his hand so that he could disrupt everything and get a laugh. They're like, oh, no way. Yahweh.
Yes.
Never call on John Smith. I know what's going on. This is not my first rodeo. Okay. And so then I'm teaching them the pragmatics of this. So they watch me. They question me. We start preparing together. I'm like, okay, here is 5 different games. Which one do you think I should choose? Oh, you should pick number 3. That's awesome. And I'm like, okay, well, can I be honest with you? Yeah. I said, do you foresee a future where 83 kids are yelling at the 84th kid during the game, chug it, chug it, chug. Oh no. Yeah. Didn't think that went through, did you? I'm glad we're thinking about this in the booth at Jason's Deli, and we're not doing stop the game. So I teach people how to do games, and then I release them to do the games, and then I watch them and I question them, and we continue this cycle. But then once games is off my plate, I now take that energy that I was spending on doing games and I put it to worship. Dude, I have got a ripping Fender Stratocaster sitting right over there. I can play guitar, okay? I have led worship at churches. I've led worship for camps. Fine. Doesn't mean that I need to do it. What I need to do is to go, okay, show me some other guitar hack, and I'm going to teach them the principles of how to lead worship. And then they're going to watch me. They're going to question me. We're going to prepare together. I'm going to release them. The story goes on. And now I have a game person and I have a worship person.
Yeah.
And so then it just, right? And so then before too long, now this is where this is now the master's degree in lead ministry, right? All of a sudden I come back around to that game person. I'm like, hey bro, you need to find a new game person. Why? I love what I do. Fantastic. But we need a deep bench in the kingdom. I know how to do games. You know how to do games, but we need somebody else that knows how to do games. Oh yeah. So remember, they're going to watch you. They're going to question you. They're going to prepare with you. You're going to give them a shot. You're going to question them. Why in the world would you do that? Oh, So all of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's Michael Meeson. He could probably do games. And so Cameron, who I taught to do games, now teaches Michael Meeson. Now we got 3 people in the mix. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
But I was systematically building infrastructure through people. And like you said, at first, it's going to be overwhelming. Pick something. Pick something. And then I envision a future, we talked about this on the last episode, where I want to be, or 2 episodes ago, that I want to be freed up to talk to new families. The only way I'm going to be freed up is that if I don't got a guitar strapped on me and I am not manically shouting out games. So in order to be freed up to meet new families, I have to have those 2 things and the teaching off of my plate. There we go.
Amen.
So go ahead.
You just described the real job of a minister.
Preach.
You really did. A lot of times people will get into ministry because they love doing ministry. And then they realize that actually ministry is not just doing ministry. That ministry is helping lead and equip others to do ministry who help lead and equip others to do ministry. And once you kind of figure out that pattern, the church is healthier and you do a lot better.
That's exactly right. And so I remember being pulled aside by my mentor in ministry. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm doing games, I'm doing worship, and I'm doing the teaching. I got this 5th and 6th grade ministry on a Wednesday night. It is a well-oiled machine. And he goes, oh, that is great. That is great. So who are you training to do those things? And I was like, ouch. And he said, you remember now, Ephesians 4, 11, 12, and on, it says, the role of a pastor is to build up the body to do the work of the ministry. Your job isn't to do the work of the ministry. Your job is to build the body to do the work of the ministry. And I said, in my mind, not out loud, I was like, that sounds like over double the work. Yeah, it's way easier for me to play guitar. It's way easier for me to do games. It's way easier for me to do teaching. I'm gifted easily in all of those things. But a short-sighted person thinks they're going to spend the next 3 to 5 to 20 years doing those things. No. I need to build the channels by which the water can flow, and I'm freed up.
That's good.
Well, this has been good. You need to build that secret infrastructure, friend. And if you don't know how to do that, you certainly could join the membership at leadministry.com. We have courses, we have coaching, we have downloads into the area of hundreds and hundreds that are print and implement strategies to make the very things that we're talking about very easy. Guess what? When I was up to my ears and inherited a very disheveled ministry, lead ministry did not exist. And if it did, my life would have been easier. So you can actually jumpstart and make your life a little bit easier. Bill, it's been great to be with you today. And gang, we will catch you guys on the next one.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Lead Ministry Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And visit leadvolunteers.com for more episodes and resources. Thanks for listening.